Amid uproar over comments published in a recent interview, General Stanley McChrystal meets with President Obama today and has already arrived at the Pentagon reportedly to discuss the possible consequences in his role and the war. Could the Rolling Stone interview cost the general his job, and should it? And what does that mean for the war in Afghanistan? Joining us now, three people with some definite opinions on that. Special military panel coming your way. Former Assistant Secretary of Defense Bing West is here. Retired Colonel Douglas Macgregor is here, who attended West Point with General McChrystal and was quoted in the Rolling Stone article, and Army Reserve Major Rose Karavori, who served under General McChrystal in Afghanistan in 2006 and 2007. First off, to you, Bing West, what do you think the ramifications are if some of this stuff is true? That General Jones is a clown stuck in 1985, that Eikenberry is insubordinate when it comes to General McChrystal putting his plan together. What does it mean for the whole war operation if these statements are correct?
Well, let's back off, though. I mean, this was locker room talk. I mean, that's what really gets to me. This was simply gossip that many journalists hear every time they're talking with a senator or the White House or anything, and it usually doesn't blow up into a huge explosion the way this did. I think this has been greatly overhyped.
Okay, fine. Let's talk to Colonel Macgregor then. Colonel, do you feel as though there's a problem when the general in charge feels the president's detached?
Well, listen, McChrystal's remarks make it impossible for the president not to remove him. I can't imagine that Obama will retain him. His remarks were extremely ill-considered and had no place showing up in public. I think all of the four stars have become accustomed to puff pieces by journalists who want to cultivate access or who are ideologically aligned with the long war. He confronted someone who wasn't there to write a puff piece, and he dealt with someone who is not ideologically aligned with the long war. And I also think that some of Stan's remarks are interesting because I think they indicate that Stan has concluded he's really on a fool's errand. I mean, the Soviet General Staff concluded that they needed about 600,000 troops just to seal the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. We're never going to put those kinds of forces on the ground over there, and ultimately the Soviets concluded it wouldn't have made any difference anyway. I think McChrystal has figured out we can't mobilize those kinds of forces, and it's not going to change anything in the country.
Major, do you agree that this is one way for the general to bail out a game we can't win?
Absolutely not. I think Mr. West brought up a good point. You have to take a look, stand back, take a look at what the magazine is. It's Rolling Stone. And you have to look at its readership. It's certainly the rockers, the youth, and sort of anti-establishment. So they're really going to bring out that piece of General McChrystal. And just as, you know, the men on this panel, they're very multifaceted, just like any senior leader of that position. And certainly senior leaders of that position have an inner circle where they're able to vent their different opinions. And certainly this was the locker room or battlefield talk of that.
Bing West, they like this guy. The soldiers like this guy. He's a fighting general, not a bureaucrat. Should he be removed?
I don't believe he should be. You're fighting a war. If you went around removing everyone for an indiscreet remark, we'd have nobody in power anywhere. I mean, General McChrystal should be judged on his strategy, and I agree with Doug on that one. The long war strategy we could debate, and I think Doug and I might be on the same side there. But don't take it out on the general. The general's staff said some things believing that that reporter wasn't going to use them, and he used them.
All right, stay right there, all of you, because our panel sticks around. And if the general is removed, we discuss this. What happens to the war in Afghanistan in the big picture? Then, the effects of cell phone signals on... We're back with our prestigious panel. Bing West, former Assistant Secretary of Defense, Colonel Douglas Macgregor, and Major Rose Karavori, who also served with General McChrystal. All three know him. First off, let's just talk about what do you think possibly happened here, Colonel Macgregor. What do you think happened with this reporter? What are your sources telling you? How did things go so wrong so quick?
Well, first of all, I think that the general expected that this reporter would be like the others that he'd spoken to in the past. In other words, somebody who is either an ideological supporter or someone cultivating him for access. I mean, all the four stars are accustomed to having puff pieces written about them. And I don't think he expected someone to report accurately what he was saying, and they didn't do their jobs. You have to be very specific with reporters. This is on the record, this is not. This is on background, this is not.
Major, do you think he's kind of got a raw deal from Bing West? And by the way, We've just gotten reports and confirmed now that he has arrived, has General McChrystal, at the Pentagon, so he is now there. Major, do you feel as though maybe he got a raw deal had thought one thing and got something else from Rolling Stone?
Well, certainly they're going to put the angle on it for the readership, but also that the reporter certainly had a lot of access and had the trust of the staff, and the staff being able to kick back and be able to talk frankly about things on the ground doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be disloyal. So they're going to follow orders, and they're going to do the utmost to win the war.
Right.
And that's really the bottom line here.
Right. And Bing West, let's just talk about who would replace him. If the President of the United States wants to look tough, talk tough, and say, I have to make a move, this is his second or third indiscretion, I got to make a move here. Who should replace General McChrystal? Is he replaceable?
Well, of course, you can shift around very quickly. General Rodriguez, who's the Corps commander out there, he could step right up. Or alternatively, they could go to General Mattis, who has a wonderful reputation with the troops. So there is always, yes, you can change anytime you want. The question is, do you gain anything by doing that? And we should remember that McChrystal has a very, very special relationship with President Karzai that, ironically, the civilian ambassadors we have don't have that special relationship.
Right. And real quick, Colonel Macgregor, I'm just wondering if this administration is even have their heart into this war. Are they in for the long haul? We never hear the president talking about it. He's not even, doesn't even seem to be on his radar, and that's what's indicated in this story.
Well, listen, I don't think people thoroughly examined the proposition in Afghanistan. There was an assumption that you could go in with a lot of cash, a lot of resources, and that you would somehow muddle through and reduce U.S. casualties and create something, status quo on the Iraq model. That had no chance of succeeding ever. The only thing we were interested in Afghanistan was keeping al-Qaeda out. Al-Qaeda is not in the country. You don't need to have 100,000 troops in Afghanistan to keep them out. And the final thing is just to echo something that Bing said. Look, de Gaulle once observed, the cemeteries are full of indispensable men. During World War II, in the space of 2 years, we relieved 32 two-star, three-star generals to get things done. We need to pick someone new, someone with a fresh set of eyes, who goes in, makes a new assessment, and reports honestly and objectively to the president.
Thanks so much, Major Kavori, Colonel Macgregor, and Bing West. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with the general over in the